Hello and welcome back to Techweek TV, brought to you by Callaghan Innovation. Today we're here in Auckland for day 5 of Techweek TV. We're at Callaghan Innovation headquarters in downtown Auckland on Quay Street, and today I'm here to present a session on the changing face of financial services. My name is Jake Miller, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Unfiltered, and it's my immense honour to be joined by some very impressive people today from all walks of life across different fields to talk about this very exciting challenge and opportunity for the country. We have James from FinTech New Zealand, we have Shahid from IBM New Zealand, we have Kristen from Kiwi Wealth, thank you Kristen. From Hudson, Gavin, Martin. So different fields from big companies like IBM to law firms through to different organisations helping Kiwis. So guys, thank you so much for being here. I guess today's session specifically is about how will open data truly help for a more competitive and transparent financial services sector. So to kick this off, James, what benefit does open data have for financial services, and what do you see the biggest opportunities and challenges being?
Yeah, I mean, I think the opportunity is immense. We actually don't really know the answer to that, if I'm really honest, at this point in time. The simple fact is that what we're actually trying to achieve is actually giving ownership of data back to the individual. So at the moment, if you think about where your data points actually sit and how they're best utilised, only last week actually we heard from someone that had just come back from the US that Facebook actually holds 29,000 data points on the average individual that actually interacts with Facebook. When you actually start to think about that, that's mind-blowing. The good thing from a New Zealand point of view though, if we actually get this right, and we've seen it tried in the UK over the last couple of years, Australia is about to go live in the 1st of July, and only yesterday actually the minister actually shared his views that if we do this from an industry-wide perspective, we actually open it up to being more transparent, we create more competition, and ultimately actually we give sort of the average New Zealander the opportunity actually to have more personalised interactions, especially with their financial services products.
And when the average consumer hears data and I guess openness, meaning their stuff being out there, but I think in the world at the moment people are freaking out.
Yep.
What would you say to sort of counter that perspective?
It's going to be a little bit of a transitionary period because at the moment we do actually give our data out actually almost a little bit, it's really quite freely. You jump in, you download an app, you click the little button that says terms and conditions. Nobody actually reads them. We don't really understand actually what we're signing up to. We've got no idea or concept actually of who and what they're doing with our data. When we move into the new world of open data, where the ownership comes back to me as an individual, I get to choose. Therefore, when I'm actually relaying those interactions, I know the amount of my data that I'm sharing with you as an organisation. And actually, because we then have vetting in a third-party context, we understand actually where that sort of chain of events actually will stop. So we actually get to be able to see that and track it and follow it, which actually is a really, really good thing.
And Andrew, what challenges and risks do you think this whole, this transition is going to present?
Yeah, well, you always ask the lawyer that, right? So, I think that's a good point that James raises in terms of it's not a free-for-all. So when you think open data, that's what immediately springs to mind. But actually, certainly what they're building overseas and what we're building here in New Zealand is something that's really secure and has kind of customer consent at the heart of it. So APIs is the technology. Those are bank grade, mechanisms to transfer data. So that's the first thing I think, and I think that the customer consent angle is really important as well. So the standards that we're building here in New Zealand, customer consent and informed customer consent about what's happening with their data is absolutely at the heart of it. The challenge I think is that once you can have the securest APIs in the world, and the banks rightly have a really good reputation for managing their customers' data and keeping it secure. When it goes into that kind of third-party world of fintech companies and tech companies, that's where actually the banks can only do so much, right? It's in the hands of third parties, and that's where I think as an industry we need to get much better, as James said, at actually building consent and building that kind of information into the customer experience. So rather than just hiding it in T's and C's that no one reads, how do people really understand what's happening with their data, and also how do they understand what the kind of commercial transaction is? So I'm giving you my data, I want something valuable in return, and that's where I think the industry can do better at meeting that challenge.
Yeah, and anyone else have a perspective on that?
I think in terms of the consent, it's really important that consumers are also able to opt out, so that it's just putting it in the simplest terms, what you're giving up and what value is coming back to you for that. But you don't, it's not mandatory, so you can actually opt in, because if we think about the benefits in terms of a consumer of what I'm going to receive in terms of financial empowerment and all these cool new apps from third parties that are going to help me along my financial journey, I may well choose to do it within highly regulated processes and frameworks which are critical.
Yeah, and what mega trends are you all noticing in terms of how consumers are wanting to share their data? Like, are people becoming less likely to do, because obviously it's interesting with certain social media platforms, like Facebook is an example of the one you mentioned, the data points they have. Like, I don't know many people my age, I'm in my early 20s, that are using Facebook anymore.
5 years ago, though, I would have said with absolute conviction that we are happy to give up our data to these large social media, because we get the benefits we get from connecting with others, and in terms of financial services, the benefits we get from empowerment is a really good trade-off. But now I think a mega trend with some of these data abuses, I think consumers are, particularly young ones, there's an increasing distrust. So I think mega trend, interestingly, I wouldn't have I didn't foresee it, but is shifting from, oh yeah, absolutely, it's for this free Facebook service, but I get to connect, to actually, this is actually way bit risky. And
can we trust these big companies?
I don't think we do anymore.
Should we?
It's not a question of only trust. It's also the whole power is shifting to the consumer, right?
Yeah.
So in today's world, when consumer owns it, they actually don't know how they can influence how their data is used in the future or now. And I think that's where a lot of frameworks are coming in. So companies, big or small, you can't just say big companies can't be trusted or fintechs can be trusted. It's everywhere else. It's more about, if it's my data about health or about my insurance or about my banking, how do I control it? And people don't trust it right now from an openness perspective.
But interesting, millennials, I think Facebook might be an exception, but they actually trust an Amazon and a Google over their bank. So I think there is a trust, with some of the larger companies.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Obviously, over the past, it's been a hugely hot topic over the past, 18 months with, the sort of fall down of Facebook as such, in terms of some of these big data scandals around the election and so on. And Shahid, how do you, see open data, set to change the financial services industry over the next 20 years?
I think 20 years would be too long, but my view for the future is, actually, it's going to be customer experience, and it's about the emotional connect with the people using the services. So financial services would be banking, insurance, and financial markets, but for our perspective, I think we could talk about banking and insurance, and how would a bank behave in a way, or a fintech, in a way that they can have better customer experience and touch point, know your customer better. That's the kind of challenge the industry should be looking at, and that's what people are working into. One example I can share, open data in insurance. One insurance company says, let me analyze publicly available weather and census records, and can I provide some better insights for my customers about what's going to happen in terms of threat prediction. So it's not always associated with using your personal data, but there are a lot of other open data sources, which is both structured and unstructured.
Okay. From my point of view, and I have to be mindful, because obviously all the banks are members. But the simple fact is, we're in a transitionary period right now. Let's be honest. All the banks in New Zealand are actually open to open data, having the conversation around that. And if you look at some of the media releases that came out sort of late last year, and some of the CEOs are actually saying, from our point of view, open banking actually doesn't go far enough. It actually needs to be around the data. And we'll actually start to see that where in previous years where we talk a good game in terms that we are a relationship organisation, we're customer centric, you know, having been in that sort of industry for nearly 20 years, sometimes as a customer, we're a byproduct of process, which is unfortunate. I think moving into the new age or the new world, we'll actually start to see this concept actually that we will deliver better customer outcomes, because there's going to be the ability, you know, we're all on our smartphones and we literally can change, you know, in 2 clicks of a thumb. So going back to that concentrated effort of actually when I interact with you as my customer, what do I do to enable that conversation or that interaction actually to be fulfilling for you, as opposed to me just ticking a box. So it's a bit of a cultural mind shift at the moment for some of the larger organisations, but I definitely think coming out the back end of it, it's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, and what do you think regulators need to look at with these changes occurring?
Interestingly enough, actually, and I spoke about this at an event actually earlier on in the week, we're going to hold a session actually in early August with all of the regulators around the table. And I think, to my knowledge, actually, it's going to be a New Zealand first, where they actually will physically all be in the same room talking about the same thing. And the thing that I've asked them to do is consider what could the future of financial services actually in New Zealand actually look like if we took a proactive approach. Because, you know, I'm probably not speaking out of turn, but sometimes they're a little bit reactionary, and that's fine. But also you've got to appreciate they've got quite a hard job. But I'm trying to sort of encourage them to think, with new technology emerging literally day in, day out, and we're only at the sort of the bottom of the hill at this point in time with this new technology. So there's still more to come. We need to get them in a room. We need to think about what the landscape actually looks like. And a great example, I mean, everybody talks about sandboxes and things of that nature, and whether we should and whether we shouldn't actually have it here in New Zealand. But if you look at the relationship that the FMA has had with a number of really successful companies over the last couple of years, and one that jumps to mind for me is actually Sharesies. They were actually in that sort of, you know, that discussion with them for, you know, 9 or 12 months before they actually they went to launch. That's a fantastic position to be able to be in, because we don't necessarily see that relationship with regulators in other parts of the world. So, you know, we do have to be mindful that we can be, on the odd occasion, very fortunate in a small, agile environment.
Absolutely. And Kristen, what, you know, all these changes going on, what's sort of the biggest impact you expect to have on the lives of everyday Kiwis?
Oh, good ones. I think we spent a lot of time talking to the Kiwi population just with the launch of the Hatch out of Kiwi Wealth, and a common theme for consumers is they actually don't feel empowered. They feel out of control in their financial lives, and that's due to lack of visibility or too many things in one place, or inability to manage or plan. And so I think shifting this control from the banks, which haven't, let's be frank, haven't kept up with the complete digitization of our lives, has shifting this control from them back to the consumer, and these fantastic fintechs and third-party apps that can actually empower us in our financial lives. So simple benefits might be things like, you know, single financial view of my life, you know, be it my accounts and my investments all together, so that, you know, as the groundwork, so that third-party fintechs can come along and help me along my journey, help plan, help support, help give me advice with that single view. Other benefits are easy application and approvals for loans, or simplifying payments and paying my bills. I think generally speaking, it's one of choice, one of transparency, and of convenience. And so I think at the end of the day, we just remember, because we speak all about regulation and about kind of this real high level stuff, the consumer's at the heart of this, and there's a reason for that we do need it, and it's to empower the lives of everyday modern consumers and businesses.
And just finally, a question for all of you, like, what's one thing that you think New Zealand, you know, whether from a legal perspective or, you know, from a government perspective, should be doing to help ensure that we stay ahead of the curve with all of these changes in the world and don't end up getting left behind and being reactionary, as James said? Maybe starting with you, Shahid.
So I think we should leverage the brand New Zealand, which is the ease of doing business, transparency, trust, and the social things that New Zealand is famous for. And I would say it's a combination of building an ecosystem between society, the institutes, fintechs, and the government. It's not only a regulation that should come out, but we should build an ecosystem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Andrew?
Yeah, look, I think that's right. New Zealand's got a really good reputation as being quite a collaborative environment, and that's where actually, because you've got so many players in the mix here, the fact that we can bring them together in one room really easily, whether it's through FinTech NZ or just any other mechanism, I think is really helpful for us. One of the areas that I think is a great opportunity to actually unlock a lot of this stuff is digital identity. So, you talk about moving your data from one place to another and sort of, realising the benefits of that. To have each company asking you each time, or each service asking you each time who you are, giving that service different data about you in order to just unlock the service is a real pain point. So there's lots of work going on in New Zealand already around how can we create this kind of one-stop digital identity that allows me to access all these services with the same data, and then make it a much easier experience. So I think that sort of one digital identity is an area where we can really lead the way and hopefully transform things.
Thank you. Yeah, Kristen?
I'm always one for kind of tangible action and just starting small, and so we're part of an open ecosystem group that's looking at how might we look at consumer right to data. And so Australia has passed a legislation and a framework around that leaves no doubt that consumers have access, legal access, and they own their data. And so I think we can simply take that document, it's already been done in Australia, and we can just simply mold it to New Zealand context and put it forth for legislation.
Yeah. And how long are you from the US originally?
Canada.
How long have you been in New Zealand for?
9 years.
9 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you keep it on track of what Canada is doing to stay on top of this world as well?
Yeah, Canada's done. Actually, they are also ahead of us, and so we can actually look to Canada, the US, the UK, and Australia that are all ahead, and that's not a bad thing. Again, because we can actually look to improve, and they're making all of these mistakes, and so there is an open API between banks in Canada.
What's the biggest thing people that aren't from North America should know about identifying a Canadian person versus an American person?
Just ask about.
Yeah. That's right. Awesome. James, what about you finally?
Yeah, we're already seeing it. I mean, this correlation between sort of large organisations and small organisations has been here for some time.
Yeah.
I think sometimes the challenge I give back to the large incumbents is that, let's vocalise some of the success. And we were at an event last night where, you've got Westpac and you've got Ada that are now launching, the fact that actually they're now working together.
Yeah.
So we are seeing that. We are a little bit behind the 8 ball on the odd occasion, and if you compare it to other jurisdictions. But because we are a little bit smaller, because we're a little bit more agile, because we actually have the ability to actually get the right people in the room, I actually think we've got the opportunity to accelerate that, because we can actually look to sort of what's going on in other areas and go, yeah, that's probably not the way that we would do it.
Yeah.
So therefore, actually gives you sort of you're able to bounce on the trampoline and sort of take 5 steps as opposed to walking the 2 or the 3.
Yeah.
So I think if we just get our ducks in a row and we think about the consumer at the focus, at the heart of all of this conversation, we've got a great opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, James, Shahid, Kristen, and Andrew, thank you so very much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here. It's been a fascinating conversation, and I know the viewers would have got a lot from it. It's clear that there's so much innovation and excitement in this space, a big opportunity. Appreciate you guys sharing your wisdom and insights.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much to the viewers for tuning in on Techweek TV today. We have many more sessions coming from throughout the day here at Callaghan Innovation in Auckland. So stay with us, and thank you so much.